There's only one woman in the world who's rowed solo across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. Her name is Roz Savage, and she's with us today at the Dolphin Club in San Francisco on Inspiration Safari. I'm on a mission to discover projects with a purpose. My name is Christian Ruggieri, and I've traveled the world as a volunteer building houses. Along the way, I met people who were creating unique projects to benefit their communities. I was so inspired to see how small acts can make a big impact. I've made it my mission to find more of these stories and share them with you. Come with me on an inspiration safari. You've rowed solo across the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Ocean.
That's right, yes.
You're the first and only woman to do this.
Yes, that's right. Probably the first and only woman to want to do it. But
What inspired you to want to row across these oceans on your own?
I was a salary slave working in London. I've been a management consultant for 11 years and was married and settled and seemed to be on track for a very conventional kind of London yuppie lifestyle. But I think I knew on the inside that that wasn't really working for me. It wasn't really making me feel happy. And so in desperation at that point, I turned to self-help books. And in one of those books, I found this exercise that suggested I should write 2 versions of my own obituary. And the first version was to be my fantasy obituary. Like, what did I want my life to look like? And it wasn't really so much about what I would do. It was more about the kind of person that I would be. And I can remember that I was writing about this sort of go-getting, adventurous person who just went out there and grabbed hold of life by the lapels and would try anything at least once, and it might succeed or it might fail, but at least they had the guts to get out there and try. And when I finished writing that version of my obituary, I remember thinking, wow, what a great life I've had. And then had to remind myself that that one was just the imaginary one. And then the second obituary was meant to be the one that I was heading for if I carried on as I was. And I realised that although it was going to be a very pleasant life, it actually wasn't what I wanted. I wanted something much more adventurous and out there. So over the course of the next few years, I gradually made a lot of changes. I had to let go of a lot of the stuff that had actually, to me, represented security in my old life. The job with the salary, the marriage, the home. And it sounds like it could have been quite a traumatic period, but actually I found it very clarifying and cleansing, occasionally terrifying, as I sort of let go of all those safety nets. But actually I felt like it was liberating me to find out what I really wanted to be and who I really was. I was reading a book about the Hopi tribe of North America, and like many indigenous people, they believe that we have to really take good care of the earth if we want it to take good care of us, that it's got to be a reciprocal arrangement, not just take. And when I read that, I just thought, wow, that is so obviously true. How come nobody ever told me this before? And I thought I have to do whatever I can to get this message out to more people. And so I was kind of thinking, how can I find a way of getting people's attention for this really vitally important message? Because being just a recovering management consultant didn't really seem that compelling a platform. And that was when, through chance, I met a guy who'd rowed across the Atlantic with his mother, of all people. And that was enough to give me the kind of happy delusion that this was something that maybe I could do, and to use my adventures as a way of bringing attention to the environmental challenges facing us and maybe suggest some solutions as well.
So Roz, you talked about on the Pacific and the Indian Ocean rows, you had more time to focus on the environmental message. I know while you were rowing, you were also blogging from the boat.
Yeah.
You're doing podcasts from the boat. Talk to us about the message that you were putting out there.
With the first stage of my Pacific row, I really wanted to draw attention to the North Pacific garbage patch, this estimated 3.5 million tonnes of trash, mostly plastic, floating around just north of Hawaii. Something quite amazing happened on that first stage of the Pacific row that really got the message about the plastic pollution across in a way that I could never have scripted if I'd tried. Soon after I set off from the California coast, my water maker compartment got flooded, And like most bits of electrical equipment, the water maker didn't take too kindly to being immersed in seawater, so it gradually rusted and sputtered to a halt. And I had quite a bit of reserve water on board, but even so, I was going to run out of water before I got to Hawaii. People started posting comments on my blog saying, do you realise that the junk raft is converging on your course? And also posting comments on the junk raft's blog saying, do you realise you're catching up with Roz Savage? And now the junk raft was also out there raising awareness of the North Pacific garbage patch. It was these two scientists from the Algalita Research Foundation who had actually constructed their boat out of junk. And so my mum got in touch with their shore team, and we exchanged phone numbers, and by talking on our satellite phones over the course of several days, we were able to meet up. So I've been able to use that story that's kind of, a human interest story, a bit of a crisis, running out of water, meeting up with these two hunky guys when I hadn't seen another human face for nearly 3 months by that point, having this dinner party where they harpoon a fish and we cook that up on board, but then with a bit of science as well. So, sometimes you work really hard at something and then fate just hands you a golden opportunity like that, and it kind of makes you feel like you're doing something right. I'm sure human beings have always discarded stuff. You eat the banana, you chuck the skin away, the coconut, whatever. And while all of our materials were biodegradable, that wasn't a problem. But now we've got this amazing new substance called plastic, which has many incredible uses, but we still just chuck it and don't really think about the fact that it's going to be there for hundreds or thousands of years. And so we need to think in a different way about what we use, how much we use of it, and how we dispose of it. And when you think of the staggering number of 7.1 billion people living here now, and how much we eat and excrete and consume and dispose every single day, I'm actually staggered that the Earth isn't looking more overwhelmed than it is. But it also seems fairly obvious that we just can't carry on as we are, that we need to find a way of reducing our environmental impact. When I first had my epiphany, I was very focused on the problems. I was like, climate change, plastic pollution, ocean acidification. And I sometimes think of these environmental challenges as being like this many-headed monster. And if you look at all the different heads of the monster and try and chop them off one at a time, climate change, ocean acidification, etc., it all seems too daunting. And it seems like every time you cut one head off, another head sprouts. Whereas if we could actually get to the heart of the monster, which is really looking into human psychology and saying, why do we behave this way? Why don't we get it that we've only got one planet and we completely depend on it for our survival? And if we put toxins out into it, we're going to get toxins right back at ourselves. If you can kind of get that real understanding of deep sustainability, if you can convey that to people, then we're really onto something. And my experience is that if you can do that in the context of an inspiring story, that makes people believe that they individually and we collectively are capable of more than we might have thought, then you can actually start to get some action.
And what would you say has been the impact of the rows, the environmental messaging?
The story does resonate with people, and I love it when I get an email from someone saying, I didn't used to know about the North Pacific garbage patch, and I'm really appreciating that you raised our awareness of this, and we want you to know that this family in the Midwest now always take our reusable grocery bags to the store. We don't drink bottled water anymore. And, something like that. It just really warms my heart. When I started to manage with less, when I started to really simplify my life, I actually loved it. I felt so liberated that it actually really gave me so much more time and headspace to focus on the things that actually make me happy and feel good. And I have to believe that we're all putting our straws on one side of the scales until one day we'll achieve this tipping point and there'll be a mass outbreak of common sense, and suddenly we'll all see the light and realise that we really do need to take better care of the earth if we're going to have a long and healthy future for humankind.
What advice do you have just for people who want to make a change and want to make a difference?
I would say to people, don't ever believe that you're too small to make a difference. And I use this metaphor of how many oar strokes it's taken me to cross 3 oceans. It's taken me about 5 million oar strokes to get across those 15,000 miles, 3 oceans. And one oar stroke only gets me a few feet, but you take 5 million of those tiny actions and they really, really do add up. I think that's it, have the vision, keep your eye on that, and then just do what you need to do each day to get a little bit closer to that.
Well, thank you for taking the time today to come talk to us at Inspiration Safari. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much, Christian.
You're welcome.